The PlayStation 2, like the original console, is home to some very unusual, rare and yet quirky games. And even as I'm recording this video, I'm finding more and more games that I never even heard of before. And there truly is something for everybody. Right, we do have a mixed bag of different types of quality titles, anything from high-end affairs to lesser quality experiences and games that, yeah, we will all agree that are probably better just left where they are. But those games did appeal to some, and there really is something for everybody, in all fairness to it, there is. But even with looking for different games to try and play, in more recent times I'm happening to stumble across games that I really never heard of, and even when I go looking for information online, there's little to no guides or resources to even tell you what the game is about. To be honest, I don't even think most people even know what the games even curtail in terms of their information. So the only way to really find that out is to sit down and play the game for yourself and make of it what you will and have your own opinions on it. And this rare game known as Card Kings is one of those experiences that I recently stumbled across. I never heard of the game before, didn't know what it was about, but from the little information I can find online and from spending time playing the game, it is a kart based racer, very similar to games like the original Super Mario Kart, which the game does take a lot of inspiration from. But it was created by an Indian development company, which I've never really heard of up until, say, making this video, in all respects to it. And you play as popular characters from a series of Indian comic book or magazines, where you're racing through a variety of different streets and environments that showcases different and famous monuments, all racing in carts that are being taken along by bullocks or bulls. So it has a cartoony aesthetic to it. But as with a lot of these racing games, you have to reach first place in order to win and progress, but you also have to utilise various characteristics from power-ups and traps and different types of weapons in order to help you to gain an advantage, while also allowing you to use a variety of different type of shortcuts and elements throughout each of the levels to gain an advantage. But as in with any of these typical kart based games, you also do have to contend with the computer AI, as a lot of these games use and are heavily reliant upon rubber banding techniques, so you can never fully win a race outright just through pure skill alone. A lot of it is down to luck, or luck based more to the point, so you'll have to be heavily dependent on your use of weapons and tactics to take advantage of a situation just to give you enough of a chance to have any chance of winning, basically. So that's just the reality of playing these games. If you've played any of the earlier or previous Mario Kart games, either on the Super Nintendo, the Nintendo 64, GameCube, Wii, even on modern consoles, or any of the clones like Crash Team Racing or any of those other games that you played, they all use very similar characteristics and use the same frameworks and models. Essentially, the majority of these games, even the budget games, like which pretty much this is, they're all the same in that regard in terms of how they play. Just they might have subtle differences with regards to some of maybe the handling physics or the visuals, but essentially they're all the same. But clearly it's a formula that works because there's so many of them out there. There is something that appeals to everybody, and like I said, going back to earlier in the video, the PlayStation 2, like the PS1, has a boatload of games that are suitable for everybody regardless of the quality. They do appeal to a lot of different players, and this game definitely would have appealed to players in the region it was released in. But luckily enough, these days with emulation, we can gain access to a lot of these lesser known or very rare games, so they are worth experiencing just for that reason alone. But overall, what's it like to play? Well, it is very cartoony. It can be tough at different points, as in with any of these type of titles, but like anything else, once you sit down and put a bit of time into it, you get familiar very quickly with the gameplay mechanics and its aesthetics, and understanding how the power-ups work. Now, there will be certain areas where you might find a bit tricky, on certain levels where you have different obstacles to avoid, or there are certain things where you have to time a jump or you have to avoid something in order to progress, and if you time it wrong, you can very quickly fall way behind the pack, leading the entirety of the race for you to try and catch up with them. But it's doable, especially on easier difficulties. On harder difficulties, probably not so much, but with a bit of practice, you'll get familiar with it fairly quickly. But it does have some decent visuals. It almost feels like a high-res PS1 game, if anything. That's what it feels like from playing the game overall, as the textures and the visuals are very low poly, very similar of an early PS1 racing game in many respects to it. But it doesn't take away from the fun factor of it. In short bursts, it's not a bad game, but at the same time I also found it to be quite repetitive after a while, because you essentially are doing the same thing over and and over again. But I suppose that's just the same with a lot of these titles. If you've played one, you've pretty much played them all, and this is no different to that. But it's a fun experience in short bursts. It is what it is. It's not breaking new grounds, it's not creating anything new, it's just taking a popular formula but adding its own spin onto it, and that's exactly what it does. It may not appeal to some, but it will appeal to others. It is what you make of it at the end of the day. But if you are interested in knowing more about this title or wanting to play it, now with emulation you can do so. And if you do have any information, regardless the development of this game or its history, I would love to hear your thoughts on it, so be sure to share it down in the comments below. And if you would like to see more content around other types of rare and interesting racing games that were like this, also released on the PS2, that very few of us know about, then make sure to stick around and check out the playlist to see more of those games that I have covered already in action. And I will see you all in the next one.